I dive into tier three, and these are where a lot of these guys will be for me, and that's in the consistent realm. These are guys that if you missed out on a tier one guy, you have a tier two guy, but maybe you want a solid backup. These are perfect guys. Or if they're your starter, but you have great running backs, great wide receivers, great tight ends, and you just want someone that's going to get you anywhere between 15 and 20 points, here's where I'd have you. You'll have some games where you go nuclear. They have great games, and some games where maybe a little underwhelming. So here I have Jared Goff. I think Jared Goff's in the upper end of tier three, approaching tier two. We also have Kirk Cousins, who's been a fantasy marvel for the last 4 or 5 years. He's been in the top 10 for the last 5, 6 years in fantasy football. He's been super underrated fantasy wise. You also have Geno Smith. I have Tua in here. I have Aaron Rodgers as well. Aaron Rodgers, I'll talk about him later in the show when we talk about some of our risky endeavors. And then I do have to respect Dak Prescott as well. He's got a lot of good weapons. He got Brandon Cooks. He has CeeDee Lamb. Worried about losing their tight end, Dalton Schultz. That's going to be a big loss for him. But these guys, they're consistent most of the time. They're going to have a couple of stinker games, but they're also going to have some games where they're absolutely ridiculous. Dak Prescott throwing for 500 yards. Aaron Rodgers doing Aaron Rodgers things. And Tua, I mean, last year Tua was QB6 before he had all those concussions.
Yeah.
So these guys are consistent. Maybe you want a slight upgrade, but these guys are consistent. They're going to be good for you. They're going to treat you well. They're going to take you out, take you on a nice date, buy you dinner, all those good things. These guys are a consistent tier three.
Yeah, consistent tier three. And then like all those picks in the tier three, one thing is a lot of disrespect in this tier. And I'm going to open it up with this quarterback because you've disrespected him, forgot about him. We're talking about misinformation. Well, the top of my list of tier three is going to be Kenny Pickett. The year one to year two jump, like I feel like that's definitely something where we see quarterbacks in their second year definitely take off. He's going to be having a full training camp of starters reps, which he did not have last year. Those reps were going to Kenny Pickett and Duck Hodges of all people. And then he also had to go through Najee Harris last year, having a plate screwed into his foot. In training camp. So Najee Harris, great pass catching running back. We saw how he carried Ben Roethlisberger in the last part of his career. And then tight ends, we've talked about before how it takes him a few years to really get the physicality. Well, last year, Pat Freiermuth showed he's starting to get that physicality. So look for Pat Freiermuth to have a breakout year, and then George Pickens, second year. And then we added Allen Robinson as a leader in that wide receiver room, and I think they really brought him in to be a veteran presence, along with who's the guy that drops passes all the time?
Deontay Johnson.
Deontay Johnson, yeah. So we have Deontay Johnson there as well. You bolstered the offensive line as well. We saw Chris Collinsworth at the end of the year starting to talk about this guy's arm angles. Really, that's the key indicator, is when Chris Collinsworth, Tony Romo starts talking about all the arm angles. That's really when you know you have a great quarterback. So that's why I have Kenny Pickett at the top of my tier three.
I do want to apologize to Kenny Pickett. He should have been in my tier three, and I forgot about him. So sorry, Kenny Pickett. Hopefully you redeem yourself. This season.
And then hopefully he redeems himself this season. Another person I want to really redeem themselves is Lamar Jackson this year. Lamar Jackson, can't have him in my tier two because he's dealt with injuries in the past. Still doesn't have any fucking wide receivers. What the hell are we doing in Baltimore, guys? We bring in Odell Beckham Jr. is a liability more than he is someone who can benefit you. He even got hurt in the Super Bowl, but he gave them enough to get to the finish line. And then Mark Andrews started to show some wear and tear on him. He got injured last year. Turns out when you throw 40 fucking passes to one guy, he's not going to be healthy at the end of the year. And then Rashard Bateman, who knows what he is at this point. So Lamar, very boom, but very bust with him as well, especially the last few seasons. And then also going to give respect to Dak Prescott in this tier as well. And then someone else who's injury prone that I'm going to give respect in this tier is Tua Tagovailoa. Tua, when he's on the field, has some pretty great games. He still has Tyreek Hill on that team. He's still ranked above Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, and Derek Carr last year, even though he sat out. And then his last two games, he had 24 in both games, and then he had 26 a couple times, and then he was at like between 9 and 17 points the rest of the season. So I think Tua, if healthy, same as Lamar, can definitely give you a good boost if you have him sitting on your bench.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everyone on that list here. Can't really refute any. Sorry, Kenny Pickett. Nothing personal.